So the last tutorial video I made went over really well, so I guess I'll keep making them. I'll be doing a tutorial series on one of the only things that I can consider myself to be remotely good at in this game, market gardening. And now I understand that a lot of people complain about Trolldiers because, they're just Muselk wannabes, they're not helping the team even though we're in casual mode and I have no place to be complaining about people playing the game casually. Okay, I'm just kidding, Xeno, your content's great, I'm just playing. But for real though, market gardening is super fun, and I think that complaining and discouraging people from trying something new and fun and exciting isn't the right way of going about it. Instead, I think it would be much better to just teach them how to be more effective with it. So yeah, I'm gonna start off with the very basics of using the meme spoon, and then move on in later videos to more advanced topics and strategies. So yeah, let's get started. Now, first of all, let me get this out of the way right now. The whole concept of being a Trolldier is fairly complicated, but I've seen plenty of videos on how to market garden that say this. But see, here's the thing. They're only covering how to use the market gardener, which is actually really friggin' easy. There seems to be this whole misconception that it's this really hard thing that you have to work at, and well, I guess that's partially true. There are two basic things that you need to do in order to use the market gardener. 1, learn how much time there is between when you click and when your shovel's hitbox will come out. 2, click that amount of time before you get to your target. That's it. That's all there is to using the market gardener. But being an effective Trolldier isn't just using the market gardener. In fact, you will never succeed if you just take those fundamentals and jump straight into a match. In order to be good at market gardening, you first have to get good at rocket jumping. If you don't know how to rocket jump, you will never succeed with the market gardener. That's just how it is. You need to know how to effectively place your character in situations and places where your shovel will connect. And in order to do that, you need to know how to rocket jump. Now, literally everyone and their mother has already done a rocket jump tutorial before, so I'm not going to waste your time with that. For this video series, I'm going to assume you are already competent at rocket jumping, you can steer yourself in the air with strafing, you know, that sort of thing. If you're not quite there yet, that's no big deal. I would recommend going and watching Nate Fox's basic jumping tutorial and becoming consistent with the topics that he covers in that video. It's by far the best jumping tutorial I've seen, and he's way better at it than I am. So yeah, once you've done that, once you've become consistent with those things, feel free to come back to this video. But until then, unfortunately, I'd recommend that you stay away from Trolldering. Okay, so if you're still here, let's move on to the basics of becoming a Trolldier. So just in case you're living under a rock and you don't understand the basic mechanics of the market gardener yet, here's the short version. You deal 100% critical hits or 195 damage when you're in the air from a blast jump, but you don't deal random critical hits. So basically what that means is, as long as you're in the air from a rocket jump, until you hit the ground, you're gonna deal crits. There's also a decreased swing speed, but that doesn't actually change anything because it's the time between the swings that gets affected and not the swing itself. Basically, in order to use this weapon effectively, you need to be able to hit your target with your shovel before you hit the ground, and that's where rocket jumping comes in. Now, at its core, rocket jumping is about getting yourself from point A to point B in a fast and efficient way. That is still partially true when you rocket jump with Trolldering in mind, but there's also another aspect to consider. So, hypothetically, let's say that you've nailed the timing of the market garden down to the frame and you can execute a frame-perfect market garden every single time. If that's the case, well, you wouldn't need to worry about the rocket jumping part because your timing's perfect. But unfortunately, we're not. None of us are. Since we're not frame-perfect bots, your rocket jump should not only get you to your target, but also get you there in a way that gives you the biggest margin of error possible. Here's an example. So if you've ever watched a market garden tutorial before, I'm sure you've heard that you're supposed to land next to your target, not on top of them. And if you haven't heard that, well, yeah, don't land on top of your target, land next to them. Here's why. Well, okay, so technically, you can still land a market garden if you land on top of someone. There's a tiny time difference between when your shovel is in range of the target and when you land on top of them. That's your window of opportunity. For the rest of this video, we're gonna call it the butter zone. all you have to do is swing your shovel at a time when your hitbox will be out at some point in that butter zone. Unfortunately, the butter zone is really freaking tiny when you land on top of your target. Now, compare that to landing next to your target. Your window is much larger since it starts here and ends not when your feet are at the same height as your target's head, but when they touch the ground. You've got all this extra time to connect the market garden, and that's what you should be trying to do with every market garden attempt. Make sure that you stay in that butter zone as long as possible. The longer you stay in that butter zone, the more likely you are to connect the market garden because you've got a bigger margin of error. So, here are a few tips for staying in the butter zone, aside from land next to your target, since we just talked about that. Okay, tip number 1, swing early. I briefly mentioned this before, but I'd like to explain it a little bit more. So melee weapons in TF2, unlike hitscan weapons, have a delay between when you click and when you can deal damage. The swing animation starts as soon as you click, but you can only deal damage once you get to this point, which is when the hitbox comes out. This is a little bit easier to understand if you've played fighting games before, since those things heavily emphasize things like how fast a character's moves come out and when the hitboxes appear. So, if you've ever played Super Smash Bros. Before, I'm sure you know that Sheik is much faster than Bowser, right? Well, that's because Bowser's hitbox comes out later than Sheik's. Does that make sense? Okay. If that didn't quite make sense, just all you need to know is this. There's a 0.25 second delay between when you click and when you actually start dealing damage. So swing 1/4 of a second early. Now, even if you swing too early, that's much better than swinging too late. If that happens, you have to wait longer before you can pull out your rocket launcher and jump away, because you gotta wait for the animation to finish. So yeah, swing early. Tip number 2, jump and approach your target horizontally. This is easier to explain when you consider the speed of your character. So say your target's right here, and you're standing right here. Now this space right here is where the market garden will connect. That's the butter zone. When you rocket jump to your target, if you jump vertically, you're going higher in the air, obviously. But that also means you've got a longer way to fall. And if you fall for a longer amount of time, that means you're going to be going down faster when you get to your target. So you're gonna have a much smaller window of opportunity. You're moving through the butter zone really fast. So now compare that to more of a horizontal jump. Notice that the amount of time my shovel will connect is much longer. I'm moving through the butter zone more slowly, which increases my margin of error. Now, obviously it's still possible to connect the market garden in the first example, but it's just much harder to do so. Tip number 3. You remember how in Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan is all like, "It's over, Anakin, I have the high ground," right? That thing, you know how all those basic soldier tutorials say that height advantage is a good thing? Yeah, okay, well, when you're using the market gardener, that's bullshit. In fact, you want to start when your opponent has a height advantage. Now, the reason for this, once again, is because your margin of error is going to be bigger. Let's take a look. So, say I'm on the high tower right here, and my opponent is down here. I want to hit him with my shovel, so I jump at him. And once I get to him, I'm going pretty fast. And if my timing is good, I should be able to connect the market garden without that much of a problem. However, my timing isn't the greatest in the world, so because I'm moving through the butter zone so quickly, I'll often miss. Okay, so now let's say that my opponent is on the high tower and I'm down here. When I jump at him, I enter the butter zone right at the apex of my jump. Now, I'm sure that those of you who have taken a basic physics course before know that my vertical velocity is really low right now. I'm in that butter zone for way longer than if I just jumped at him from above, or even longer than if I were to jump at him from the same height like I discussed before. So I've got all this time to connect the market garden, and he is forced to either go for an air shot or just try to dodge me. Tip number 4, don't use the base jumper. There are a couple of reasons for this. I know I talked about making your margin of error really big, and this weapon certainly does that. However, we want to increase your margin of error by slowing down your vertical velocity. The base jumper also slows you down horizontally, which is really bad. Notice that I can start off a jump going really quickly, but as soon as I pop the base jumper, I slow way down. This makes me a sitting duck for snipers, demos, soldiers, or pretty much anybody. Also, the base jumper forms really bad habits. If you come to rely on the base jumper when you're market gardening, then you won't improve when it comes to rocket jumping, and like we said before, that's really bad. I know this word gets thrown around a lot, but it's just a crutch. If you use it as a set of training wheels, it's really just going to hurt you in the long run. Now that being said, the base jumper is actually really fun. You can snag people in places you normally wouldn't be able to, and it's hilarious when you're just descending slowly on a sniper who has no idea that you're there. But again, you shouldn't use this until you can consistently market garden without it. Alright, tip number 5. TR Walkway is a godsend for learning market gardening. I've talked a lot about the rocket jumping aspects of Trolldering, and I know I talked about how you'll find it really hard to succeed without forcing the margin of error to be as wide as possible, and while those are really important, it's also really important to just learn the timing of the meme spoon. Even if you have a really big margin of error, if you don't practice your timing so that it connects sometime during that margin, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, I'd highly recommend downloading TR Walkway for this. I'll leave a link in the description. Now, just in case you're living under a rock and you don't know what TR Walkway is, it's basically a custom map where the bots walk in a straight line down a path. You can customize that path by using these controls over here, which is really nice for learning how to market garden at different elevations. I would recommend starting by trying to get the bots while they're going up this hill, since that margin of error is a bit bigger than we talked about. Try to get to the point where you can consistently market garden the bots when they're walking up and down the ramp, and also when they're going across a flat surface. And if you ever get bored, well, there are some cool jumps that you can figure out while you're at it. Now, I know that everybody hates to hear this, but this is the best way to learn. Just practice. There really is no substitute for just hitting the lab and grinding out some market gardens. I have spent many hours on this map, and I can guarantee you that they were all extremely helpful and totally worth it. Tip number 6, crouch. Just always crouch when you're in the air. I saved this one for last because it's really simple and really easy. The way crouching works in TF2 makes it so that your character's legs come up rather than moving your torso down like most other games. This gives you a slightly longer amount of time in the butter zone since your feet are a little higher in the air. That's it. So yeah, just crouch. That's all I got. So those were some of the very early basics to using the Market Gardener. Hopefully this helped you out a bit, but I want to remind you that we're just now getting into this series. Once you get a basic handle on market gardening, we'll talk some more about the more advanced strategies to being a Trolldier. Things like mindset, how other players think when you're approaching, different jumps you can do, things like that. I'm really excited about this series, and we haven't even gotten into the meat of it yet. So yeah, stay tuned. Until then, go hit the lab, load up TR Walkway and try it out. It'll take some work, that's for sure, but I promise you that once you get the hang of it, it will be one of the most silly, fast-paced, completely fucking ridiculous and fun times that you've ever had in TF2.